Tune in to the Red, White, and Blue Show, where David, Martin, and Nick will blow your mind talking religion, politics, and money too. It's a talk show that's always in prime time. With their unique perspectives and in-depth analysis, they'll keep you informed on the latest news. So join the conversation on the Red, White, and Blue Show with David, Martin, and Nick. Your go-to views.
So good evening, everyone. It's the Red, White and Blue Show. I'm David Poulden alongside the ever insightful Martin Costello. Unfortunately, our good friend Nick Smith isn't available tonight, but we're thrilled to be joined with the brilliant and engaging Lucy Brown. We've got quite a few things we want to talk about because it's been a while, hasn't it, since we did our last show, Martin? I think it's probably coming up a year now. So it's been a little while since we've done one of these. So quite excited actually to do another show.
Absolutely, my God, what has happened in this last year as well? The world's just completely turned on its head, and probably the worst of it's happened is we now got the Labour regime, haven't we? Which is pulling off things worse than expected.
It is indeed. It is indeed. So some of the things we want to just go through tonight, as we've already discussed beforehand. So we're going to be looking at the suicide bill, or commonly known as the terminally ill adults end of life bill. We want to touch on that. Backing our farmers, obviously, and immigration. Now, I know Lucy wants to jump on the immigration. I've done a little bit of a read up just now on some of the other topics because I didn't realise Nick wasn't going to be with us this evening. So we're just going to start off. Sorry, excuse me, I'm really, really ill, absolutely dying. But before I do that, before we do jump into that, let's just be a little bit of courtesy. How you been, Martin? You well? You good?
I am. I'm just surviving, really. Trying to live life under this new regime, as I can only call it. Life's just suddenly got much more of a struggle, I think, from these tax rises and things that hit me personally. So, but apart from that, I'm doing okay. I am surviving. As you know, coming from a town like Swindon, we've seen dramatic, massive changes. So we've seen, it completely swamped like with mass immigration and problems like that. So, but we're doing what we can to raise awareness and hopefully fight this.
I live in the dream then, Martin. Live in the dream, mate. Okay, right. Well, so let's touch on this terminally ill adults end of life bill then. What's your thoughts on that, Martin? Because there's a lot of controversy about this. A lot of people have been kicking off and stuff about that. I mean, I'm 50-50 with it, but I don't think it's a good idea, obviously, because we've seen what's happened in Canada with it. What's your thoughts of it?
It's a really, really difficult subject. I do get kind of both sides of the argument. I can see it being okay in cases where, when people are really, really ill and there's no hope for them, and they are suffering massively. But the concerns that I have with this bill in particular is I think it's a slope and onto something much more sinister. I think it could be abused, and that's when the problems start to arise. And I think that's what's really, really behind all this. There's no denying. I think over the so-called pandemic, we've seen things like midazolam used extensively, which ended a lot of lives prematurely. And I've got a horrible feeling this could be abused. Now, if you look at Canada, the dictatorship over there, they're actually allowing people to end their lives for not even like terminally ill reasons. They might be in a massive debt or something. It's just, you have to question where the humanity is here. And I just think it starts to open up that whole area, that whole grey area of where we could actually lead to here. It doesn't put a value on life. There should be more looking at people and how we can perhaps help them more. And like I said, if someone's terminally ill, there could be a justification for it. When you see it on the mainstream media, obviously the BBC, they're showing just those very small amount of cases where it could be appropriate. But I honestly believe that there's a far sinister agenda behind this. And we know how they like to kill off the elderly, as we saw over the so-called pandemic, and more recently, forcing pensioners not taking their heating allowance away. So we're going to see a lot more die over the winter period. So very uneasy about this. And I actually wrote to my MP to say that I was not happy about this going through, but we know this communist regime's like they're quite happy to push it.
Yeah,
so uneasy.
Totally agree with your mind on that one. I mean, it is a slippery slope. As you mentioned there, the old what's going on in Canada there, and they were talking about extending it to people with mental illness, and they described people who were against the vaccine as mentally ill. So, we can see where that's going. And it's it sort of gives an erosion of trust in any sort of medicine. We've got hospices have said that they're not backing it. They won't be approving that either. But we've heard the likes of like Bill Gates as well talking about the economic pressures of hospitals. With people that are basically just going to die anyway. It is a very, very slippery slope. But again, my thoughts are 50-50, because if I was in a bad way, I don't know, I'd probably jump off a bloody building or something. But you know what I mean? If you don't, rather than suffering, you can sort of see that point. But we know there's a bigger agenda to that.
No, absolutely. And rule number one, if Bill Gates is involved with anything, that should raise alarm bells. We know what this guy is capable of, a very dangerous individual, and anything to do with the World Health Organization as well. More dangerous people. No doubt it'll be Billy Boy selling the medicine for this as well. But if people are really that inclined to end their lives, they could still go to Switzerland or whatever. It's just they're just making it too convenient to die. And as we know, the elderly, as soon as you retire in this country, they just want you gone, don't they? Let's face it, because you're a burden on the tax system, the pensions. They want you dead. They want to take your assets, and that's what's really behind it, David.
You're a bundle of joy, Martin.
Well, it is that season, isn't it?
It's a true story, though. So, moving on to the farmers. I don't know if you made it down to Whitehall the other week. So there was a protest down there, wasn't it, with the farmers? I got down there a little bit too late after work. I caught the arse end of it. I managed to speak to a few of them down there and get a few pictures from there, as you've probably seen. I popped up on X. But yeah, I mean, we've got to back our farmers, Martin. As you know, they're the backbone of our national food security, and obviously, Brexit was about being independent, and we can't start, obviously having our farms fall apart and being solely reliant on, foreign farmers. And if the lefties are so uptight about carbon footprint, they wouldn't want all of our food to be imported. Can you imagine what the carbon footprint on that would be? But yeah, I mean, it's disgraceful. Inheritance tax, family farms are all going to be lost because of this. And then we've got now this pesticide, or this, as they're calling it, I forgot what the name of it is now, which they're giving to the cows. To stop them farting. Have you seen this, Martin?
I have. I mean, look, let's make no mistake about this thing. This is a land grab. This is what's one of the reasons behind it. What we've seen, previously with the previous government, they were paying farmers to retire early. Now they've obviously got as much of that as they can out. They need moving on to the next phase. Now, just a week before that bill went through, the inheritance tax, none other than the wonderful Bill Gates again was there, roaming around the halls of Downing Street. Someone who owns a hell of a lot of farmland in the United States.
And apparently, Martin, just to stop you there a second, mate, one sec. One of the farmers I spoke to down at Whitehall, and I don't know if this is true, but she reckons that there's no minutes available from that meeting of him attending 10 Downing Street. Surprise,
Isn't
surprise,
that funny? Yeah, no, isn't that funny indeed? Again, of course, we know Keir Starmer's involved the World Economic Forum, just like Sunak and obviously Bill Gates is. But again, another big part of this is if you control the food, you control the people. There is a much bigger agenda at play here. Now, in this country, as we know, and you'll be speaking to Lucy about later, has been hit by mass uncontrolled immigration. We are no longer self-sufficient, and we are reliant on importing food. Now, we could see some major rationing going on here. There's a lot of global instability, and that would be a prime opportunity as well to implement a central bank digital currency. You know, there is no coincidences here. It's all related. So we can talk about, obviously, vaccines begin to stop cows farting and all this nonsense about the green agenda, but that's just a smokescreen for what's really going on underneath. And I hate to say it, but that man, that Bill Gates, you know, that guy needs to be behind bars, David.
Well, interesting, Martin. I think you know, as we know, we saw with the vaccine, which we'll try to keep the chatter about that to the minimum, because remember our very first show, Martin, we got banned for talking about the Pfizer report. Do you remember we actually read the side effects from the Pfizer report, and YouTube banned us, well, banned me in particular. But it seems that YouTube know more about the vaccine than the people that make it, funny enough. We saw this with that, but that's what I'm a bit worried about with this as well. It's slippery slope. There's no long-term side effects with regards to, you know, the chemicals that they're using on these cows to reduce the so-called methane. We don't know what the long-term side effects would be. There are some reports I was reading earlier, you know, simple things like eye irritation, skin irritation, but also there is a worry of fertility. That could affect fertility as well. So that's another thing to keep an eye on. And then obviously now people are now boycotting, is it Alara products or something like that?
Yes.
I've seen people now, you know, boycotting the likes, you know, their products like Lurpak and all that, which is a shame because I love a bit of Lurpak, mate. You know what I mean? Especially when I'm hungover.
Couldn't afford it, David. What your job? But no, it's great though, because this is what we've got to do though. If we've got to vote with our feet on these things, that's all we can do. And I've seen some amazing images when I go to like the supermarket, all these products being left on the shelves, because like you say, we don't know what's in them, we don't know long-term effects. And when you're talking about things like infertility, we know that's another part of the globalist agenda. You know, they try to break down the family units. And we know the birth rate in this country is absolutely plummeted. And of course, that is going to have major, major implications going forward. But this is how they control people as well, then, you know. They like to use these sorts of things. And it's just very concerning. And, you know, just going back to what I previously said, anything that Bill Gates is involved in, you should be extremely, extremely concerned about.
Yeah, I couldn't agree any more with you, Martin. To be fair on that one, I mean, he is a bit of a shady character, isn't he? To put it mildly. Right, let's move on to my next topic quickly, which is immigration. So we've seen reports that these are the ones that we know about, but it's saying since our comrades have been in power, the Labour Party, 20,000 illegal migrants have crossed since they've been at the realm. And recently we saw Comrade Keir Starmer say that the mass uncontrolled immigration wasn't by mistake, Martin. It was by design. Now, I know, Lucy, you wanted to jump in on the immigration, so feel free at any point to jump in when you like.
Come on, get them out. Time to leave, everyone. Goodbye. Party's over. Show's over, folks.
That's a very simple policy.
Yeah, very simple policy. No, I'm just looking up on online. It says deporting 9 million people who, but mind you, have been brought here against our will. I'm sure they're nice people, but they have been part of a human experiment, basically lab rats. Like, these people have been used as lab rats. We've been used as lab rats. So I think it's only like reasonable to say to the government, okay, well, experiment didn't work. Off we go. Do you know what I mean? Like, you need to fix this. It won't happen, But it's, like, I think that's just a natural thing that you're just like, oh, okay, so you just experimented on us for years. Like, we need to just like reframe the way that we're looking at this. Like, it's probably been going on since way before even Blair. But
Mm.
I mean, what do we do about this? We're talking about they're taking pop shots at Kemi across the thing, and they're just, suddenly Starmer's like having a go at the Conservatives about not deporting enough people and all this kind of stuff. But yeah, I'm actually, I know there's a lot of like back and forth about whether or not reform is, reform versus homeland and stuff, which is fine and healthy. But I also just think, can we all just phase forward and be like, we need to just hold these people to account? Like, whatever your thoughts on like Farage and Tice and Steve Laws, all these people, like, I just think we all need to be looking forward and saying, okay, experiment failed. It doesn't even matter, actually, the race or religion. Like, on paper, it's just a numbers game at this point. So I think it's just sensible to work out what to do about it, because they've just admitted to us that they've ruined the country. So I think it's only natural to say, okay, we'll fix it then.
Oh, be careful, Lucy. You'll get called a far right extremist, white supremacist, xenophobic, you name it. It seems impossible to talk in a negative light against immigration in this country without being, labelled one of those names, which is a shame. But, I mean, if we look at the impact that, mass uncontrolled immigration has had on the UK, regards to, the NHS, schools, housing, we're overwhelmed at the moment. You try and get a doctor's appointment, and good luck with that. Not to mention, the crime, and the security of this country. We've got, I think, something like over 27,000 jihadists on a MI5 watch list. I mean, that number exceeds the number of army reserves that we have. So yeah, it's quite concerning that it's continuing. And when does it stop? That's the problem, and it's not going to stop. But how do we how do we get it to stop? That's the key thing.
I don't know. Like, obviously, I jest and I'm like very over the top in my language, because I think a lot of us just don't care anymore. We did 2016. And now Trump is back. Okay, we'll do it again. I don't know if Le Pen will get in, but it kind of feels like we'll do 2016 all over again, but we'll learn from our past mistakes. But I think that one thing that people miss is that the language that the government uses about toxic misogyny, for example, and all this extreme misogyny. I just think it's a very feminist position to say that I don't want loads of men coming from countries where they don't respect women to be planted next to schools with young English children that not only have no idea that these people might not, just might not be this cartoon character, nice, innocent refugee that they're reading about in books, but also told that if they think anything else, if they think anything but that, then there's something wrong with them, and they'll have the police come over and, basically kind of threaten them to shut up. So we have a real problem on our hands. And it is funny how, like, anti-liberal this whole thing is. Like, you could say that the government doing this to the people is fascist, if you like. I don't. There's just so many things that I think we got wrong in the past, because we all got called racist, and a lot of people, when that happens, they kind of double down or kind of take the piss. And then be silly and join all these groups and stuff. But I think now it's out in the open. I just think, okay, like, we should all just be out in the open about it. And I think when I look at the Guardian and stuff, and I think there's so many articles even there that you could say are totally racist against native Brits, and like pushing the idea that this was all a conspiracy theory. And I know I like to say that we should go back and revise this. And if you think about all these anti-hate groups and documentaries and stuff that's been smearing people for pointing out what the Prime Minister just admitted was true this whole time, I think it's just like hugely significant. But you're right, I don't actually see those changes being implemented. It just seems to be kind of a oopsie, like, sorry, anyway, let's bully Kemi Badenoch. And it's just like, don't let them get away with that. So I'm not sure what to do. I can only see it that reform is obviously a battering ram, and the fact that just getting the figures, people like Matt Goodwin and is it Rupert, what's his face, from Reform and stuff, great, go and get the figures. But don't you think this is a bit backwards of us, that in this day and age, that basically fighting the government to try and not have them destroy the country, you need to get figures for what they've actually imported? And like, we're doing GCSE maths here. And it's just like Starmer, it just seemed to me like Starmer said, oh, this is the first. It seemed like the first time he'd actually sat down and looked at them, and he said he did a double take. And it's like, well, if you're going to go by that logic, then you were calling everyone racist, like on no, there was no basis because you hadn't seen the numbers, so you were just blanket calling everyone racist then. So this whole thing, I'm just very angry. Can you tell? Like, I'm just so angry. So many of us aren't far right, weren't far right. We were just kind of liberal, pissed off people that had like a glib sense of humor about it and said some edgy stuff, but ultimately just sitting in our house tweeting. Like, that's what makes me really angry about it. It's the fact that they try to make it sound like we were all this big, terrible, evil threat and, trying to drive the numbers up and like arrest more people than was necessary to be like, yeah, we're dealing with the far right. And it all just boils down to like, oh no, but they were correct and we've just admitted it and we're just going to just let that go. I'm not letting it go. No way.
Yeah, too right. It's got, you're spot on there, Lucy. And I think, going back to like the knock-on effects of all this as well. So on top of them, well knowing and, deliberately flooding our country, with uncontrolled immigration, there was an article that it was actually a link that you shared for the young lady that was stabbed and killed by a so-called asylum seeker from the hotel that she was working at. I believe she was like 27 years old. She left behind a young boy. And sadly, I was looking. I don't know if you've seen, Lucy, but I got a notification a couple of days ago, and that has only raised, I think so far, raised about $7,500.
7,200. Like, sorry, I've been following it, but it's just like, isn't that annoying that Chris Carver, the Chris Carver guy, got like 15K for like, what was it? Something like emotional support money. The guy the murderer, sorry, the gangster murderer got like his family got like 15K. And you sort of think to yourself, is that what this woman's life was worth? Like, not even 10K ultimately. Like, it's so horrible.
Exactly what I was thinking when I saw it. I was quite shocked, to be fair. And I remember a few years ago looking on these funding sites and stuff like that, and there was like funding for like mosques and Islamic centers, stuff like that, and they were raising like tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of pounds. And we've got somebody here who's been murdered by a so-called asylum seeker. As it going back to again, left a son behind. And they're struggling to hit 10K. So I will post that link again tonight. Actually, I'll reshare that because I think that's absolutely shocking. And I think that's a problem with our society. We don't look after each other here.
Even worse than that, it wasn't just a random woman. It was a woman working at the hotels. Like a woman who, by the sounds of it, was really selfless, really nice, just trying to do her bit. And like doing everything that society probably would like be clapping her for doing. But then where are they now? Like, where are they now that she's lost her life? Like you said, they can't even break 10K on this crowd fund. And I'm sort of thinking to myself, like, what can we do? Like, I was almost like jump out of a fucking plane if I have to. Like, how do we help this family know that that people out there support them? But I mean, I get it, like everyone's broke too, it's Christmas, but I'm just like, what can we do that's not gonna get used and be like, oh, far right hijack, blah 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 kind of thing. It's infuriating.
Yeah, you're spot on. You can see that happening from a mile away, can't you? Really. But again, where the people that be calling in us far right, where are they putting their hand in their pocket? And sending money over. So it's it's one of those ones.
On top of that, her sister, so it's Rhiannon Sky White we're talking about, and her sister posted on Facebook, like not long after the attack. Apparently, they put again, like they've been housing more migrants, not telling anyone in the local area, even after one of the hotel workers. They're just plonking them, not telling anyone. And her sister, you would kind of assume that if she worked in the migrant hotels, that it's probably kind of a fairly liberal family. But the fact that after that, obviously her sister's posting this saying, guys, let your daughters and wives and whoever know that this is happening, because obviously my sister's now being killed by this. I sort of wonder what conversations are happening in that house. Do you know what I mean? Like, it does change you, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I wouldn't like to think. I could imagine the conversations, or should I say planning, that would be going on in my household if that happened to my sister or a member of my family. Because that's just, it's outrageous, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. If we look at all the different attacks that have taken place, over the years, from terror attacks and other rapes and murders and all sorts of things. And the sad fact is that this could have all been avoided, but unfortunately, it was all by design, apparently. So yeah, I mean, Martin, what's your thoughts on? I know you're a big fan of uncontrolled immigration, Martin, aren't you?
Oh yes, I've seen the delights of it. I sure have. No, I think like the whole thing with immigration, we need to look at it as what it is, though, because what they do, they just bundle it all into one big pot. But not all immigration's bad. We have to remember that. I've always been an advocate. We should be trying to get the skills that we need, to fill our hospitals, and where we have all these shortfalls at the moment. Because now immigration is so high, all these people coming in, obviously, if you mentioned earlier, we're not getting any, we can't get a doctor's appointment, things like that. So we need to be obtaining a lot of these skills. But obviously, the people that we do not need are those who are coming here to literally take advantage of our system. And they're being encouraged to do so. Let's make no mistake about this. This is a deliberately done to fill those hotels. We've got the likes of Serco profiteering from this. A lot of people making a lot of money, and of course, all closely connected with the government as well. So it's absolutely deliberate what they're doing, and they've got no intention of slowing it down. Let's face it, they could have. We live on an island, for goodness sake. They could have stopped it immediately, but they don't want that. And of course, what they do, though, when they bring in these far right terms and all that, they're making out, oh, you're stopping all these poor refugees coming in. The vast majority are not fleeing any war or anything. And what I can never get my head around is, like, particularly those crossing the channel, why are they escaping the European Union? Is it that bad over there? They have to risk their lives to come here. There are so many questions that people should be asking, and we've been more than generous to help those less fortunate ourselves. Every day I see a new video of all these very well dressed. They're always young male as well. They're not females or families. Young males, well dressed with mobile phones in really nice hotels. I saw one today of a hotel near Telford. It was basically like a 16th century castle, and when you've got them living the life of luxury, and we've got our own elderly freezing to death, our council tax going up to pay for it, it is really, really grating on the British public now. And you just wonder, at some point, is there going to be something that just sparks something? Because that's what we saw, obviously, in the summer when the so-called riots happened. But you just have to ask, we have got the stiff upper lip, but how much more can the British public take of this? We're seeing our quality of life being completely eroded away, and we're turning into basically nothing slaves to fund all this. I just think there's going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back soon, David.
Yeah, well, spot on. I think more so, I'm more worried about seeing our national identity being eroded away, and that's what this is all about, isn't it? They flood a country with uncontrolled immigration. You lose a national identity, and then once there's no national identity, there is no country anymore. That's what all this globalist, one world government's all about, isn't it? Essentially, they're invading a country without even a shot being fired. It is really, really concerning.
Mind you, we're talking about these numbers coming in, and the numbers are bad enough. It's something, I think it was something like 9 million or something, around at least 1.5 million a year or something, probably conservative estimate that we've been like bringing in. And you think, okay, well, that those numbers are terrible. But on top of that, mind you, there are going to be people that are first, second, third generation. They're having, birth rates, 5-1 compared to native Brits as well. So you're just going to see this huge population explosion. Already we are seeing that, but it's just going to be way more noticeable. I think it's about in the smaller towns and cities and all the sorts of people that like to call people racist on Twitter. Those people now, it's going to be their grandchildren going to schools and being a minority in those classes, having to learn things that they might not agree with. And then they'll get called in by the school if they have any problem with it and all that kind of stuff. And you're right, the national identity. I mean, I was just speaking to a friend today that's got a toddler. He's in school in London, and how old is he? He's like about 7. And he's one of the only 3 white kids in the whole school. The other 2 are Polish. The whole school is Bengali. And apparently he got bullied at lunch for eating ham sandwiches and for having a mum that's in a relationship with another woman, because obviously there's rampant homophobia in like certain communities, that apparently that homophobia is fine, but woe betide you to say the F word or whatever. But yeah, you just think, okay, so that entire young English boy's life is going to be completely different to the experience that many of us had at primary school. For example, running around with your friends, eating the same food, talking the same language, mums speaking to each other in the playground. I mean, my friend said no one speaks to her in the playground. It's just all these little things that make up the tapestry of Britain. Once they're gone, they're not going to come back. I think people don't quite realise that. They're not just going to bounce back and suddenly it'll be okay again. There's no integration happening at a wide level, and it's just getting worse and worse and worse. So I just don't understand why we're not just saying, okay, experiment failed, everyone has to leave. Obviously it looks bad, and it will look bad, and they won't do it. So it's just kind of like, okay, so what do we do with this information?
Totally agree. It's I think, well, especially in London, I think it's pretty much a lost cause now, isn't it? I mean, I lived in Australia for almost a couple of years, and I was late for work one morning. I had to walk into work. The buses come out every hour or so, and I remember walking into work, and this big tall Australian guy with like a little cowboy hat on, walking a little dog in the middle of nowhere, looks at me and he says good day, and I looked around. And he said, no, he goes, I'm talking to you, mate. And I said, oh, sorry. He goes, you said, oh, you're English. He goes, do people not say hello to each other in England? I said to him, mate, if they could understand what I was saying, one thing, but they'd look at me like I was nuts. Could you imagine if you looked at someone random in the street here and said hello to somebody? They would look at you like you're a nutter. I think there's just so many different communities now. Nobody trusts anybody. Nobody really chats to anybody. The whole thing is just gone to pot, hasn't it?
David,
Really.
I think I was going to say that Lucy made a great point actually about integration, and I think that's been one of the biggest problems about this. Really, I mean, even towns of like my size, there is a total lack of integration. There's different communities and there's pockets of areas, and people live with those, and they're basically countries within countries. I mean,
Yeah.
this will not end well. We've seen it in other parts of the world where all this ends up doing is causing conflict. You see them fighting on the streets because their cricket team beat the other cricket team or whatever. You're going to have these people clashing over religions and all sorts of things. And it's just a recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
Like I said, people should be welcome here. If they integrate with our society, they're more than welcome. But you don't go around your neighbour's house and start moving furniture around how you want it, etc. Do you? And I can just see.
It's funny as well as listening to, there's a bunch of women who wear hijabs on TikTok. They go viral talking about their opinions. And a lot of them seem to actually have a lot of hatred for women wearing Western clothes. And it's not something I'd ever really thought about. I mean, we are trained to not find the burqa offensive. I feel like I shouldn't even say that. Like, I shouldn't even say it, but I find the burqa offensive because to me it represents, it may as well be a chain around your neck. Do you know what I mean? Like, to me, there's things that I look at that I think are offensive to me, but my offense as a British person is bigotry. Whereas if somebody looks at me, I'm wearing a short dress, and heels or something, and they think, oh, what a slag, that bigotry is acceptable. Like, that's what I don't understand as well. I'm just thinking, like, there's a lot of talk of hate, and yet at the same time you've got people that, by the sounds of it, hate dogs. Another thing that I wasn't really aware of, this whole thing of hating dogs or not wanting to be around dogs. And again, that affected me personally because I had the police came around years and years ago to do with some stalking thing that I was going through. And the policewoman that came round, she was a Muslim policewoman in a headscarf, and she refused to come in my house because I was living with a dog at the time. And I now understand that apparently in the Quran it says if you have a dog, it means that angels aren't in your house or some bollocks, whatever. But I was thinking, like, well, that shouldn't matter. Like, you've got a person that's a victim of a crime. You need to come and talk to them. And instead of like being able to do that, your religion is like not letting you essentially provide the service of victim support. So again, like, and then you had that policewoman that that got fired from the Met, and she was talking about, oh, the kafar have touched my coffee mug and I can't drink from it now. Do you remember that girl? And she was making jokes about 9/11 and all this kind of stuff. And you were just like,
Is
what?
this the one who got fired recently because it found she was sending money to, like, I don't know if it was ISIS or somewhere, but she was sending money to some sort of Islamic terror group? Was that the same one?
I don't know if it was the same one. She went viral. There was like a picture of her wearing a headscarf at the front of some police line. Everyone was like, isn't she a hero? And then it came out that all I know is that she was making jokes about 9/11 and talking about her colleagues as kuffar. I mean, talk about hateful. Do you know what I mean? It's just stupid.
She sounds very well integrated.
But yeah, this is two-tier hatred, or two-tier, so you're allowed to walk around and like look at basically someone dressed as like a normal British person and be like, oh, you fucking slag, and that's okay. I do not understand, and it's so funny that it's coming from like the most liberal government in the world is basically telling you that you have to respect people who hate women with rights. You're supposed to respect them because of their skin color or something like that, some kind of child's view of the world that they have. And it's just like, guys, I think the wool has been pulled like over our eyes for a long time, but I think it's clear to me that there's been a shift, especially recently, like a real shift in our language, and I think a lot of us just don't care anymore. Maybe some of us have already been cancelled, so we're kind of over it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. I think a lot of people were just tired of it and they're just like, whatever. They've sort of given up, but I can't give up. There's a driving force inside me that just will not let me give up. I can't stop. I mean, I started off on this, I'd say, centre left, to be fair, Lucy. I mean, I was, going out, I was, protesting against the Iraq war, hanging around with a bunch of lefties. And then until I realised how much they hated us and they hated our country. And I was quite taken back by some of the comments that I heard. And it was a bit of an enlightening, a bit of awakening. And, I realised that they were a massive problem.
It's actually super
Yeah.
racist. Like I had the same thing in BLM, very cringe, but way before I joined anything to do with the right wing or whatever, I like joined BLM again, lefty, fashion. I just shouldn't care about all this stuff. And went to join BLM. I was like, I'm gonna go help fucking whatever black institutional racism, and it basically was a brainwashing cult of just like everything bad is the white man and everything good is black people, and that's it. And like there was so much underhanded nasty racism like comments coming from people within those groups, and especially like stand up to racism as well, and everything that Corbyn would come, and it was just this kind of very cult like atmosphere. And if you think about, they all call people grifters on the right, and you think, well, you guys are kind of grifters. I mean, you got kind of racist grifters as well. It's just the difference is that you've got the backing of the establishment. But I mean, it's pretty racist if you actually want to take apart the meaning of racism. It's doesn't do them any favors.
Yeah, they always seem to accuse people what they are themselves, don't they? That's what makes me laugh about them. They're the most intolerant, bigoted people you could ever wish to meet. I've been on out before to try and interview them at protests and things, and they are just so nasty and vile. There's no facts or any logic behind them. They just spit venom at you. And you're quite right. I do feel like they are actually a cult and brainwashed in some way. They're always turning up to these events with their placards all the same, all funded allegedly by George Soros as well. And I think in America, like BLM was, they're all there just to stoke up division and going exactly against what they claim to be. And it's the hypocrisy of them, and they just need to be called out for it each time. They disgust me. They really do. They're the real purveyors of a division and hate, in my opinion, David.
Well, it's leftardation, isn't it, Martin? I mean, I wouldn't slag them off too much, though. Didn't Hope Not Hate do a fantastic write-up about you once in an
did.
article?
I'll give them that.
The thing is,
I remember
like,
reading
I was really pleased with
in
that.
terms of that, like I think about it sometimes, but Matt Collins from Hope Not Hate, he had a whole film about him, right, that I think is coming out on Netflix at some point, and he was in the Communist Party and stuff like that. But in his book, apparently he talks about when he was in National Action, he used to literally beat up Muslim women and stuff like this. Like, and he used to be proper, like, skinhead Nazi type violent guy that would literally go into a meeting of Muslim women and beat them up. And I'm thinking, that is way more racist than anyone I think I've ever met. Like Martin Selner,
Yeah.
like Lauren Southern, with her fucking flare guns and whatever. But Jesus Christ, I mean, a lot of us, it was like we were just basically taking the piss. Like a lot of us is us taking the piss. But if you actually spoke to someone that was a Muslim or Jew or whatever, like you would be completely normal. Whereas this lot, I think they're projecting, like, I know it's a very old point, but I just think, yeah, it's a lot of projection. They seem to think that we're as racist as they seem to be. That's what it seems like.
Yeah, they are a bit special, aren't they? I think I don't know if you see this recently. It was only a few days ago, and there was every Saturday you got the pro-Palestinian marches. And just to be clear to everybody listening, I'm not on either side. I'm on the side of humanity, and I think it just needs to stop. But the trouble is, this conflict's been going on for a millennia and isn't going to stop anytime soon. But like I said, I'm not on either side. I think both sides, it's all gone a bit too far now. But I've seen protests recently where there's guys standing there doing Nazi salutes in the street, and it's like, you're on the side of that. Like,
I know that,
how can
honestly,
you call people Nazis and you're literally there doing Nazi salutes?
Like they were chasing Jewish people around Soho Square, saying, "There's the Jew, get him." And I'm like, I've hung out with fucking Patriotic Alternative and like all those people, and like like all the very farthest of far right in Britain, and even they wouldn't go chasing Jews around. Like, what the hell was that? That was just insane, calling for intifada and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think we get tucked up a lot as well, as you probably know, Lucy. You've probably seen yourself that process and stuff. I've got some footage from a couple of years ago now where a lot of people went down to the Winston Churchill statue to protect it after it was vandalised by Black Lives Matter and the cenotaph. A lot of my friends are all ex-army and stuff, so they went down there. I interviewed a veteran down there. I don't know if you see that interview. The guy basically said that Sadiq Khan was a traitor, should be arrested and shot. The video went viral. He ended up getting the sack. But on that day, in particular, it was just a massive setup. The guys were there. Don't get me wrong. There were a few lager louts there or whatever, as per usual. But they actually sent, agent provocateurs in to wind people up. There was like one, I swear, the gate of it. I'll have to share the video again. But to me, it looked like that Sasha Johnson, but just jumped up on the wall, and the BBC camera just happened to be facing her. So there was nothing there beforehand. BBC camera's on a tripod facing the opposite way to where everybody is. She jumps up on a wall, starts shouting, "You white CUNTs, da 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 da," etc., etc. Of course, everyone's then gone for her, starts throwing cans. A police horse just happens to come in the middle whilst they're throwing the cans. So that's what they project on the news. But 5 seconds before that, it was all peaceful. But we seem to get...
Sorry. It reminds me of Manchester when we marched after the Manchester bombings. There was a load of lads that turned up with a pig's head, and like again that got like pictures in the fucking paper or whatever. And you're just like, who's that? Like a lot of people were like, who's that? Like, who are these guys?
Yeah.
Like maybe they are just drunken dumbasses, but honest to God, like who in the hell in their right mind would go, oh yeah, bring a pig's head to like the protest against like killing kids in a fucking, like Ariana Grande concert or something? And you do think to yourself, like, is this like what's going on here? But yeah, don't say that about Sadiq Khan, to be fair. Don't say that. No one should be saying that anyone should get shot. Do you know what I mean? Like, I just want him to not be mayor anymore. That's my opinion. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I don't agree with violence. The
Winston Churchill statue protest. That was when that bloke with the barber jacket came, and he like took all the signs away. Is that one?
I don't think it was on that particular day. It might have been another one, but I don't think that was that particular day.
The week before, they was ripping all the statues down, weren't they? Like in Bristol, the Edward Colston statue, and I think in London they threatened to do it. So I think that's what come there. But again, though, you're quite right, though, because what they do, the mainstream media, they love these sorts of optics, and that's why when people go into protest, you have to just be calm And if you see anyone misbehaving, call them out, because they're most likely being put in there. This has happened in the United States. We've seen a lot of the pro-Trump rallies. They've done exactly the same thing. They'll put people in there to cause trouble, and conveniently, the cameras are there as usual. And of course, the masses only see that because we know the tell-lie vision is probably the most dangerous weapon of the last 100 years. And I don't, mean that lightly either. It really has been. It's the way it's swayed public opinion, even up to recently with the so-called pandemic. But I'm just hoping now people are starting to see through all this, because I do feel like institutions like the BBC are finally crumbling now, and people start to see through the lies.
Well, yeah, I remember as well that there was a thing where back to the Manchester March again, like they didn't give us enough space for the speeches, like the area that they cordoned off for us, they'd fenced it off, it wasn't enough. So we were piling in. And then a couple of lads just were like, right, we'll make some more space, because it was getting a bit like health and safety nightmare. So these guys started pushing the fences just behind the speaking area. They just pushed them back. It took about 5 seconds. All right, cheers, lads. Good for you, like whatever. That picture, then someone took a picture of them just pushing this thing out the way so that people could get into this space, and that picture was then used with the headline like, skirmishes, it got violent at this protest. So they tried to use the picture of these guys just like helping make sure that people didn't get smushed because they didn't give us enough space. And they were like, oh yeah, look at them, they're running wild in the streets. And it's just like, oh my God, like how quickly they can change it, and shamelessly as well, completely shameless.
There was one protest I was at, Lucy, just quickly. I was down at Westminster, and there was a geezer waving at his mate. And there's a photograph
I know
taken
where
of
this
him.
is going.
Yeah, and it was there was like a Nazi salute, but he was literally just waving to someone across the road.
Because a lot of it is like, the football lads at Whitehall, and they were having a go. I forget there's so many protests, aren't they? They all blend into one. But they were kind of shouting at the front, and you think a lot of football lads, they put both hands in the air or one hand in the air. They're singing football stuff, they're singing like, maybe it's like unpleasant stuff, sure, but like a lot of them are just going, putting their hands up. But of course, suddenly it's like, oh yeah, look at all these apparently Nazi like football lads that we've got. A lot of them are probably just like conservative boomers. Do you know what I mean? Like, but yep, the art of the camera.
Oh, they do. I mean, the same protest I was just talking about down at the it wasn't a protest really. Everyone was just there to protect the Winston Churchill statue and the cenotaph. But I remember a guy came past on a push bike. And as he came past, he started shouting, some rude words, shall we say, at the crowd. So a few people took offence to it and chased him. And as he rode round literally right by Parliament, there's like a sea of police there, and the police opened up and let him through. And then all these big fellas already running after this geezer on a bike, and then the press are there taking photographs. And then in the next day, it's like the far right clash with the police. I couldn't believe it. I wouldn't believe it when I see it with my own eyes. It's just disgusting.
Do you know it's funny as well, because like there's so many journalists, like obviously during the riots, and everyone wants a hit piece about Robinson, who's in prison at the moment. They come at you when they want their hit piece. And how many journalists I've sat down with hours and hours talking about, it's not actually far right, it's not actually this, it's actually a lot of people that you meet on these marches are not the sort of people that they make it sound like, and yada yada yada. And I've explained like exactly what Starmer has now admitted. I've been like, this is what people think. A lot of them don't even want to be, considered right wing. I never thought they were right wing in any way. Like, I don't even think this is a right wing argument. You can be the most left wing person in the world and say these immigration figures are ridiculous and this is too far, and you shouldn't experiment on countries without telling them. But yet they never publish it. They just never publish it. So there's all these journalists wandering around Whitehall, going out to parties, probably schmoozing with right-wing guys and pundits, and probably, getting pissed with them. But then when it comes to the article, it's like, oh yeah, they're so evil. And it's like, you went out drinking with them last night. Like, it's just so fake. I hate how fake it is.
It is. And especially when you've got people that got genuine concerns about it, and it's a shame they just get shut down and cancelled. And I don't know if you see the tweet today or it might be, I think it was today, with Clive Lewis, MP in Norwich, and he was saying about going to an far right protest, protesting about immigration. It's like, come on, mate. People got genuine concerns here. They don't label everyone far right just because you disagree with them. But it's just what they do, isn't it? The old saying,
Well,
throw enough shit, some of it will stick.
They're protesting what the Prime Minister said that has been done to them.
Yeah.
This is abuse.
Yeah.
You abused us. We're angry about it. We're protesting. It's actually not about the migrants. Like, obviously, if you there was that town in Ireland that was like 500 people, and they're like, let's put 600 men there. Great. Like, of course, people are going to be angry at the pink thing in front of them. Sure. But then, of course, like, this just shouldn't be happening. And those people probably were, a lot of them, anti-racist, just liberal, living their life, just going about their day. But suddenly, I'm sorry, 600 African men. Like, that's just ridiculous.
What could
like, you can't,
possibly
and they
go
were
wrong,
promised a bunch
Lucy?
of stuff. I know it should, like, I feel like it's, that whole thing of, like, 2 + 2 = 5, and it's just like, there's so many men from Africa. I'm sorry, but that is just an objective fact. It's just so many men from Africa, and I'm just like, what have we done to these to these countries to make it? And then when you Google, like, places like Sudan, you're like, is there war in Sudan? And it's like, well, yeah, Sudan's like conflict all the time. So it's like, technically, they can all say that there's war in their countries because their countries are falling to pot. So it's like, okay, are we just going to be a creche then for these people to come and just dilly-dally around, and while our entire culture gets eroded, their country's probably just as bad? Like, I despair. I despair.
Yeah, it's
Why do they?
I was talking to a friend of
I was
mine
gonna
the
say,
other
why
night.
don't they fight for their country?
What?
They shouldn't be fleeing the country. They should be fighting for their country, just like our ancestors have done for those genuine ones. Do they want their cultures and to be eroded? Does some of them really even want to be here? They probably don't. They should be fighting.
I don't want Africa to be bad. I want Africa to thrive. I want Africa to thrive, and I want people from Africa to have a nice life and not feel the need to leave because their country sucks.
Exactly. Totally agree.
Right, that being said, I think we'll wrap it up there, guys. Thanks very much for joining us tonight, Lucy. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Really, really do appreciate that. And again, Martin, thanks for joining us. Yeah, it's been a year, Martin, I think, since we did the last Red, White and Blue show. So it's been a little while.
It's been good. We need to be doing this more, raise awareness. That's what it's all about, really. Just say what people are thinking. That's all we do. We're nothing special.
And we'll be back next week, same time. So next Wednesday, 7 p.m.
Hey, thanks for having me, chaps.
Take care. See you later, guys.